"Get out of my house." That's what I shouted when I opened the door and found 100 strangers inside my lake mansion. Music blasting, drinks spilling, and in the center Karen from the HOA, smiling like she owned the place. What she didn't know was, every single one of them had just walked into the most expensive lawsuit of their lives. Now, you might think I'm exaggerating. 100 strangers in my mansion. How does that even happen? Let me rewind, because this wasn't just about one crazy night. This was the end result of months of petty rules, harassment, and an HOA president who thought she could control every breath I took. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll see why every single guest walked away with a $100,000 problem attached to their name. It all started with the HOA rulebook. You know, the type pages and pages of nonsense designed to squeeze every ounce of joy out of living in a neighborhood. Karen didn't just enforce the rules, she created them. She thrived on control. She was the type of person who measured grass with a ruler, who fined kids for chalk drawings on the sidewalk, and who believed that everyone should ask her permission before they so much as breathed near the lake. And I was her nightmare. I bought the lake mansion she'd been eyeing for years. She wanted it, she didn't get it. And from the day I moved in, it became her personal mission to make my life hell. Every week, it was something new. Your trash bins were visible for 5 minutes longer than allowed. Fine, your dock lights are the wrong shade of white. Fine, your guests parked on the wrong side of the road. Fine, it never ended. Petty little fines, constant threats, and her smug little smile as she delivered each one. At first, I played along. I paid the fines. I shrugged it off. I told myself, don't give her the satisfaction. But then the fines got bigger. She wasn't just nickel and diming me anymore. She was coming after me like it was personal. 500 for excessive laughter during a family barbecue. $1,000 because my Christmas lights weren't in harmony with the neighborhood's theme. She'll fine me for my dog barking at geese. Geese. As if I can control wildlife. But the thing about Karen was, she didn't just want money. She wanted control. And the lake mansion was her obsession. She told anyone who would listen that I didn't deserve it, that she should have been the one to own it. She hated that I got the house she wanted. And every fine, every letter, every confrontation was her way of trying to push me out. I remember the day she crossed the line. She stood on my dock, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her nose, and she said, "You don't belong here. This house should have been mine. One way or another, I'll make sure you're gone." It wasn't just pettiness anymore, it was obsession. And that's when I started keeping track. Every fine, every threat, every ridiculous claim. I wasn't just going to fight back, I was going to bury her with her own arrogance. The tipping point came when she tried to ban my family from visiting. That's right. She actually filed a complaint that my relatives, my own mother and siblings, were unauthorized visitors and therefore trespassing. Can you imagine? My own family in my mansion, treated like criminals because Karen couldn't stand the idea of people enjoying themselves. That was the day I decided, no more playing nice. No more just paying the fines and rolling my eyes. If she wanted a war, she was going to get one. And the thing about me, I don't fight small. I fight big. I fight smart. But here's the part Karen never saw coming. The petty fines, the endless threats, the HOA harassment that was just Act 1, because when she finally overplayed her hand, when she reserved my lake mansion for 100 of her guests, like it was some community clubhouse, that's when I unleashed my secret weapon. And trust me, you'll want to hear how the escalation turned into the most expensive night of her life. Because by the end of it, not only did Karen lose, but every single one of her so-called guests walked out owing me $100,000. The judge slammed her gavel so hard, the whole courtroom jumped. And then, with the calmest voice you can imagine, she said the words that changed everything. The defendants are liable. Karen's face went pale, her allies gasped. And I knew the nightmare she created was about to cost her and her guests more money than they could ever imagine. Now, you might think the story ended there, but what came next was even more shocking. Because this wasn't just about one ruling. It was the unraveling of everything Karen had built. Stick with me, because the downfall was messy, public, and brutal. And trust me, you're going to want to see how far she fell. It's one thing to win in court. It's another thing entirely to watch the dominoes fall one after another. Like fate itself decided to turn on Karen. The moment the judgment was read, I didn't just feel relief. I felt the weight of months of harassment, lies, and intimidation crashing back on her shoulders. And the look in her eyes? Pure disbelief. She had walked into that courtroom convinced she was still untouchable. She thought her HOA title made her queen. But that day, she was stripped of her crown. Each of her guests had sat smugly, assuming Karen's bravado would save them. But when the ruling came down, reality hit like a brick wall. The court held them all accountable for trespassing and damages. Every single one of those 100 freeloaders was slapped with a $100,000 liability. Do the math, that's $10 million dollars in total. $10 million. Imagine the sound of 100 jaws hitting the floor in perfect unison. That's what it felt like in that courtroom. Karen tried to speak, tried to argue, but her lawyer was already sinking in his chair. The evidence I had gathered, the photos, the security footage, noise complaints logged by neighbors, the property damage invoices, all of it, stacked like a mountain she couldn't climb. And the cherry on top. Witness testimony from guests themselves, who admitted Karen told them the place was hers for the night. That one line destroyed her. It turned her from victim to orchestrator, and the court didn't hesitate. After the ruling, word spread like wildfire. Local papers picked it up. The story went viral online. And suddenly, Karen wasn't just the loudmouth HOA president anymore. She was a cautionary tale. Imagine seeing your face plastered across headlines. HOA president sued for $10 million. After hijacking mansion, she couldn't go to the grocery store without whispers. Parents at school pickup wouldn't even make eye contact with her. For someone who thrived on control and reputation, it was the ultimate punishment. But here's where it gets even better. The HOA itself, the very organization she used to torment me, turned on her. When insurance companies refused to cover the damages because it was an intentional act, the HOA board realized Karen wasn't just a liability, she was financial poison. They held an emergency vote, and in less than a week, Karen was out. Stripped of her position, stripped of her influence, and facing bankruptcy from legal fees and damages. The empire she built on intimidation collapsed overnight. Meanwhile, I walked back into my lake mansion with the kind of satisfaction you can't buy. The place was trashed after her party, but every broken glass and every stained carpet felt like a badge of honor. Because I knew those repairs weren't coming out of my pocket. Karen and her crew had funded my renovation, whether they liked it or not. And let me tell you, there's nothing sweeter than rebuilding after. Destruction, when the very people who tried to ruin you are the ones footing the bill. Now, some people asked me, wasn't it too much? Suing every guest for $100,000? But here's the thing, if I hadn't taken that step, they would have walked all over me. Karen would have spun the story, painted me as the villain, and the HOA would have backed her up. By going big, I sent a message not just to her, but to everyone who thought they could trample someone else's rights. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. Don't mistake silence for submission. And the irony? Karen always preached about community values, about respecting the neighborhood. Yet she was the one who violated the very principles she claimed to uphold. In the end, justice didn't just balance the scales, it flipped them completely. She went from ruling over the neighborhood to being exiled from it. No friends, no allies, no authority. Just a pile of debt and a reputation in ruins. Looking back, I realized this wasn't just a fight over a mansion. It was about boundaries, about standing up when someone decides your life, your home, your peace of mind is theirs to control. Karen believed she could hijack my property and get away with it. What she didn't realize was that by crossing that line, she signed her own downfall. So, if you're ever up against a Karen in your own life, whether it's an HOA tyrant, a boss who oversteps, or anyone who thinks they can push you around, remember this story? Remember that you have more power than you think. And remember that sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting or fighting or lowering yourself to their level. Sometimes the best revenge is letting the system work in your favor, letting the truth burn brighter than their lies. And watching as the walls they built crumble on top of them, Karen thought she owned my house for a night. Instead, I owned her legacy forever. That's the real victory, if you made it this far. I want to thank you for sticking through the chaos, the battles, and the sweet taste of justice. Stories like this aren't just about drama. They're about reminding us that standing up for ourselves matters. So if you enjoyed this journey, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next unbelievable story. Trust me, it's one you won't want to miss.